Today marks 18 months since South Africa began its two-year non-permanent term at the United Nations Security Council. And with 6 months to go, the country's ambassador warns that we are in for a chaotic world. In a broad-ranging discussion with the SABC's Sherwin Bryce-Pease, Ambassador Jerry Matjila responds to some questions on the Security Council's effectiveness in the world where geopolitical tensions are once again at the peak, the Libyan and the Palestinian files, as well as African unity and the United Nations and the upcoming UN General Assembly.
Ambassador Jerry Matjila, welcome to SABC News. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Sherwin. It's always nice to be with you and your viewers in South Africa.
Ambassador, is the Security Council in its current format? You have the 5 permanent veto-wielding members, where often national interests displace the collective good. I can talk about, the Secretary General's call for a global ceasefire, a COVID-19 resolution that is yet to materialize months into this resolution, begging the question whether this council is fit for purpose in the year 2020.
Well, Sherwin, as we mark the 75th anniversary of the United Nations and the end of war, we have hoped that we'll see more and more united Security Council. But remember, Security Council is a reflective of the polarized world in which we live. There is so much contestation among the big power players in the world who want to have their influence and have their say on global issues. And unfortunately, this has a tendency to deny the Security Council to discharge its full responsibility towards maintenance of international peace and security. But we hope that with more and more cooperation of the elected 10 members of the Security Council, a dent can be made, an impact can be made for the resolution of conflict, especially we in the African Union A3, now joined by civilian Grenadians. We normally come together and make sure that on the issue of Africa, whether they differ or not, we make a headway.
But even despite, the consensus of the elected members, it's the big 5 that really have the power. Has that frustrated the desires that South Africa has sought in the council in terms of, whether you judge whether your last 18 months have been successful or not? Do the big 5 impede the ability of the smaller nations really to make progress on the agenda items they seek to move forward on?
Sherwin, we came knowing that the P5 always have their say. Remember, we are back in 10 years, 3 times. So we have a bit of understanding in South Africa how to go around the P5. We make sure that on matters of peace and security in Africa, whether it's the DRC, whether it's Madagascar, whether it's Sudan, we have our say. And actually to a point where we have a veto power. So we developed a strategy to engage in them regularly, continuously, non-stop, and make sure that they really have a respect for the views and voice from Africa.
My sense, Ambassador, sorry to interrupt, is that South Africa has worked, as you well point out there, really hard to elevate the African Union positions in the Council, right? Often arguing for the Council to give the sub-regional body a greater space to achieve some of its goals. I think of the Libya file, I think just this week of the great Ethiopian Renaissance dam dispute, South Sudan and others. Is this a healthy or a frustrating tension between the Security Council and the African Union?
Well, you can look at different ways. I look at it as something that was expected, but as something that typical South African, we go down fighting. Typical South African, we go on negotiating. Typical South African, we go on and show the power and influence of talking of negotiation. Of course, sometimes you get frustrated, because this delayed peace and security, it delayed taking a decision that can put certain African countries and sub-region in an economic footing so that then we can go into realizing the economic integration of the continent, that no sub-region is left behind in this integration. Because we are launching, supposed to be next month, the African Trade-Free Union, so we're making sure that nobody behind. Secondly, we say this is the year of silencing the guns in the African continent. So we did everything possible as South Africa, and together with other A3 members, to make sure that we continuously and slowly silence the guns in the African continent. That's why we work so much on Burundi, so much on Madagascar and other countries to make sure that we move in that direction. Of course, we don't always have our say, but it's something that we stay focused on. It's something that I think as a country and as a continent, we need to continuously advocating for.
A few years ago, Ambassador Secretary General Antonio Guterres spoke about Libya, the Libya file, as one of the low-hanging fruit. They really thought they were on a trajectory here to bring peace to this country, but there have been tensions between the Arab group at the United Nations and the Africans that have wanted to sort of reclaim the Libya file. Of course, South Africa very involved in the initial resolution, the no-fly zone in 2011, Resolution 1973. What's gone wrong on the Libya file?
Unfortunately, the contesting interests of major power and sub-regional organizations outside the African continent have dominated the Libyan file. Whether it's European, American, it's Russia, it's Middle Eastern countries. They all have their hands in the Libyan file. And they deny Africa to play a meaningful role, actually a leading role in resolving the Libyan question. That's why we have thought that the Brazzaville process, led by President Sassou Nguesso and our president and others, could inject some form of momentum through the supposedly organized reconciliation meeting of Libya. We thought that angle could be perhaps the most looked after to pacify, unite, and ask Libyan forces to move together towards peace. Secondly, that's why we are also saying, as we move in this way, we should take care of the spillover effect of the conflict on the neighboring countries in the Sahel, Niger, Mali, and others, and therefore create a corridor, a space to make sure that we contain the outflow of Libya into the region. And third, we said to the countries, please stop importing arms and foreign fighters in Libya. You did that in 2011. You didn't tell us where you dropped the arms. Again, if you do that, the African continent is going to bleed, because post-Libya, you will see the repercussion of the action in Libya now today. But we hope that they will give us a chance to play the role, because they have not solved the problem in 9 years. They haven't solved the problem. I'm sure they will see the wisdom of an African.
But I think it's another example of just how ineffective the council is. You're talking about there's an arms embargo in Libya that has not been adhered to, and the council has reiterated its position that this thing needs to stop, and it doesn't. It simply doesn't. Countries ignore the council.
Sherwin, the council is polarized, and unfortunately, we can impose sanctions on certain members of the council, but you cannot impose sanctions on other members of the council. So those who know you impose sanctions, they will just listen to you in the most honorable way, but not do anything, because there is nothing we can do. This is an unfortunate way. That's why we have been saying, reform the Security Council, give Africa permanent membership of Security Council with full veto power, so that we can also say, you go this way or else you face the consequences. Until you do that, with so many conflicts in the African continent, this council, with so many conflicting and geopolitical tensions and positioning, you are going to have a big problem in resolving the African continent.
There's also an argument to be made to just do away with the veto entirely, so that no one country can block the consensus, right? But that's a discussion for another day. I quickly want to touch on the Palestinian question, threats by the Israeli government to annex parts of the West Bank and the Jordan Valley, which would be a violation of Security Council resolutions, a violation of international law. We saw the Security Council in the meeting you held in the council, the Secretary General call for Israel to back away from this. Where are we going here on the Palestinian file? Are we ever going to see a Palestinian state, Ambassador?
You know, as South African, this is a very sad day and a blight to international community. That for almost over 70 years, we have watched Palestinian land being grabbed, Palestinian future being obliterated. It's a very sad day that we agreed. We took over so many resolutions. Every day take a resolution, Israel annexed territory. Every time we say peace, Israel moves in the opposite direction. And unfortunately, all these resolutions have not been fulfilled. Nothing can do because Israel is backed by a very powerful country. We cannot move. So we have thought that given this potential development of annexation, that may trigger a volcanic eruption in the Middle East, countries will stop, step back, and say maybe there's another way to resolve this issue. Let's go back to the negotiation. We have thought that by now, the countries will go back to negotiations. We have thought that now that the UN and TABA will reconvene and go back to the negotiation. It is far away. And unfortunately, they don't have measures which we used to enjoy in South Africa to say, let the global community take these measures. So it's a very sad day, but I think we should continue raising our voice, we should continue supporting Palestinians. Even if it's one Palestinian is left, I think South Africa should stand by that Palestinian and ask for the right of Palestine for self-determination, for the statehood in peace with Israel.
It took a long time even for South Africa. South Africa is one of the good examples of what can happen through the UN process. Ambassador, let's talk. You talked about one of the big, strong countries. Like, I want to talk about the three big countries, China, the US, Russia, and even the US and the European Union. What do you make of these? You know, when the elephants fight, they talk about the grass getting trampled, right? What do you make of geopolitics in the world where you have these dominant powers at each other's throats?
You know, Sherwin, we used to talk about multipolarity, but I must tell you, we are in a chaotic world. We still try to, there is a one hyperpower, there is emerging power pole in terms of China, Russia, and the EU is trying to create a space for itself. So it's a transitional arrangement. So you see a friction, posing, pulling, pushing, and I think it will ultimately settle down to some form of agreed global relations, some form of conducting peaceful relations among states, because none of them can secure its own peace, none of them can secure its own regional peace. They will need one another to secure global peace and security. There are so many transcontinental issues, climate change, terrorism, COVID-19, the list is endless. We need one another to survive in this world, to make peace in the world. They will realize that one day.
We also need African unity, right? And let's talk about the election of Kenya that will replace South Africa on January 1st. South Africa's last day, of course, December 31st. We talk about the fractures we are seeing in geopolitics. We talk about the big countries that are trying to find a space for themselves. What about African unity and Africa's space amidst all this chaos you talk about?
I think what this lesson was on Kenya, Djibouti, it shows that we need to work very, very hard on sub-regional organization. IGAD should have solved this problem long time ago. If you look into the previous contestations, sub-regional organization, whether it's SADC, ECOWAS, they first resolved that issue. By the time you go to the AU, there is unity from the sub-region. So the lesson is that as an AU, maybe under the chairperson of let's strengthen the capacity of sub-regional organization to deal with their dispute. Secondly, at the AU level, we need to streamline mechanism of resolving conflict as they emerge. We were informed at the summit in February 9 and 10 that there were a process at the AU commissioned by the heads of state and government in Niger to get the permanent representative of the AU to go into election process to select the representative of Africa for 2021-2022 to replace South Africa. And we inform about the outcome. But of course, one of the parties dispute. So under United Nations Charter, every party has the right to come to the UN to present its name. So Djibouti did. But Kenya confirmed what Africans confirmed, that it is a preferred candidate for the continent. And all of us, including Djibouti now, we have said to Kenya, we'll help you.
The final question for you, right? The General Assembly in September will be a different General Assembly that we haven't seen in a very long time, very likely going to be a virtual event, which means heads of state and prime ministers and kings and queens and hundreds of their delegations will not be coming to New York. Are you relieved?
No, we can't be relieved. It's always a great pleasure to see the president and the ministers in town because they give me the chance to reflect on very key global issues that you talked about. Where is the world going? What are the issues? And where in this world is South African interest? Where are our interests of development? Where's our interest in terms of capacity of our state? So it's a good chance for us diplomats. We always look for, of course, it's a big tactic, but we're always looking forward to stay with our leadership and say, we think this is what South Africa can get out of this UN system as a whole. Now we don't have that chance. It will be on virtual, but hopefully things will be relaxed so that we can maybe post UNGA usual. We can go back and recollect because in December we are the Chair Security Council. So what normally is our chance, like last year, it was a chance for us to confer with our political leaders on the theme, the signature issues, the outcome we want, and the participation in the Security Council. So we hope there will be a chance post during CODIF for that type of interaction. But we are ready, but we'll miss them dearly.
So ending on a crescendo in December of this year, Ambassador Jerry Matjila, always good to see you. Thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Sherwin, and the viewers in South Africa.
Ambassador Matjila is South Africa's permanent representative to the United Nations and our delegate, our lead delegate in the Security Council.
Well, we have to wait and see how Kenya occupies that seat and if occupying that seat will bring about any change. So we're going to go to a quick ad break. When we come back, we're focusing on what's happening in Zimbabwe. It's been 3 days now since the country's decided to suspend trading of the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. And then also a conversation that we're having COVID-19 and how COVID-19 has had an impact on the economy, and now with countries deciding to lift some of the economic restrictions, what impact this could have on the spread of the virus, as some countries as well are insisting on going ahead with the polls. Just after this.